Welcome, welcome. In this video, we're going to cover a Google Analytics 4 or GA4 tutorial for beginners. We'll go through installing GA4 on your website or web property, configuring administrative settings, viewing out-of-the-box reports, and customizing reports to suit your needs. First, log into Google and go to analytics.google.com or search for Google Analytics, and it should appear as the first result. If you don't have an account already, this is the landing page that you'll see. So click on Start Measuring and begin to create your account. If you already have access to a GA account, go to Admin and click on Create Account. We're brought to the same account creation screen. So when you create your account, keep in mind that your GA account could potentially encompass multiple web properties. So for example, your account name could be your organization. And within your organization's account, you could create GA properties for your website, a subdomain, a mobile app, or so on and so forth. So we'll give this a name and take a look at these settings to figure out which one you want to enable. I'm going to check off the first one because I want the enhanced demographics and interest reporting. We'll click Next and set up our first GA4 property. Give the property a name and set the correct time zone. Click on Next, and you can choose to input this business information. We'll click on Create, and it'll bring us to the terms of service, which we'll have to accept in order to proceed. Choose the platform from which you'll be collecting data. We're going to choose Web for our website and input the URL, as well as a stream name. I'm just using the URL again for the stream name. You can also use plain language. For example, for us it could be Digital Learning Sandbox website. So either way works. There's also this section for enhanced measurement, which shows you the interactions that are automatically tracked if you keep it enabled. This includes tracking for page views, scroll tracking, outbound clicks, site search, video engagement, file downloads, and form interactions. If there are any that you want to disable, click on the gear icon and switch the toggle off for the undesired interactions. Then click on Create Stream. Then it'll provide you with installation instructions. If you're using a website builder or CMS, you can click on this tab and choose the platform that you're using. If you choose a specific platform, you'll receive instructions for that platform, so you can just follow those instructions. But we'll go back up here and click on the tab to install manually. So here it provides us with the script tag that you can copy and place in the code of your website. If you're using Google Tag Manager, there's an option for that here. And it'll bring you to this documentation where you can follow the instructions for Google Analytics 4. So you can click on Learn how to set up Google Analytics tag, and it'll bring you to this documentation here. You can choose this first link to configure Google Analytics 4 tags in Google Tag Manager. And this will show you the instructions. So we'll cover a couple ways to install your Google tag step by step, starting with manual installation by placing your tag directly in your HTML code. So copy this snippet of code, find the opening head tag, and paste the code that you copied. The second method is to add the Google tag using a tag manager like Google Tag Manager, or GTM for short. It's a great way to manage your tags, especially if you're not a developer. You can manage tags for advertising, other marketing tools, creating customized tracking, and validating the data you're tracking, all without developer resources. Go to tagmanager.google.com, and once the page loads, you'll see that you'll need to create a new account. So the account structure for GTM is similar to what you'll have in GA. So the account name can be your organization name, and the container can be similar to what you named your properties. So the target platform that you select is the type of web property that you're tracking. So click on Create, accept the terms of service. Then you'll see the instructions to install GTM. So copy this first snippet of code, go to your HTML. We'll remove the snippet from the previous example, and we'll paste our code as high up in the head tag as possible. Go back to the instructions, copy the second snippet of code, go to the HTML, find the opening body tag, and paste that snippet of code right after the opening body tag there. Close this out, and in this overview section, click on Add a New Tag. Click in the tag configuration and choose Google Analytics GA4 configuration. Go back to your GA4 installation instructions where you can find your measurement ID in a couple places. In this code snippet, there's this URL with a query string parameter for ID, and everything after the equal sign here before the quote is your measurement ID. You can copy that. It's also here in this line, or if you click out of the installation instructions, it's also up here in this section. So you can copy any of those, go back to your GTM tab, and paste your measurement ID in that field. We'll leave this option marked because we want that page view event to fire and send to GA. Next, we'll set up the trigger that will fire this tag. So click in the triggering section and choose this all pages trigger. So this tag will fire whenever a page loads. And we'll name this tag GA4 configuration and save it. Now we can see if our tag works. Click on preview and publish the empty container. So once the container is published, click on preview in the modal or the preview button next to the submit button in the top right. Then what will happen is a new tab will load where you'll input your URL for the website. So once you do that, click on Start. This will load the next page as well as a new tab with your website. And you'll notice in the URL that it has this GTM debug parameter. So you can differentiate that page view in your GA. And here on this page, we'll see in the lower right corner that the preview mode debugger has been connected. If you go back to the previous tab, you'll also see the same success indicator. Click on Continue, and what you'll see here is that Tag Assistant shows you the tags that have fired and the tags that haven't. This shows us our GA configuration tag fired successfully. We can go to GA4 to validate this as well. In your GA tab, click out of this and click on the clock icon. You'll see the real-time report load, and look at that. There's our page view event right there. One of the key differences between GA4 and Universal Analytics is that Universal Analytics is hit-based. You have different categories for different types of hits. Page view hits, event hits, social, e-commerce, etc. In GA4, the data model is event-based. Basically, that means every interaction can be measured as an event. And in GA4, in the interface, you can actually create events. From the left navigation, go down to Admin, and in the Property column, click on Events. So you already have existing events that are measured. Some of the events are marked as conversions, so you can toggle which events you want to be marked as such. In order to create an event, click on this button here, and then you can create your custom event. Give the event a name. We'll call this Main Page Link Clicks. That's kind of long, but that's what we'll go with. You can set the conditions that Google will look for in order for the event to fire. For example, if we want to create event tracking for links clicked on from our main page or our home page to other pages, we can set an event parameter called event name equals to page view, add a condition, and we'll use page refer equals our homepage URL. So that should track any links that the user click on from the home page leading to another page on the website. And as another example, we have an event that we created for high page engagement. And you can see the parameters here. We have an event name for scroll and then a parameter for percent scroll greater than or equal to 75%. And there's some documentation in Google Analytics for which you can find different parameters that you can leverage. Once you configure your events, you can go to test it. So let's go to our page here. Let's just reload this. And then we'll click on a link for read more and go to the reports section. Click on real time. And we can scroll down to the event here. And there's our main page link, clicks, event. You can click on that and it'll provide you with the details here. You can see the page location, which is the link that we clicked on from the home page with read more. If you go back, you can see that your page refer is our homepage. When you're creating or modifying an event, just make sure it's not a reserved event name, or if you're using any of the event parameters, make sure it's not any of the reserved event parameters. And there's some documentation and a link in the description where you can see the event naming rules. So these are the reserved prefixes and event names and parameters. So just be aware of that when you're creating your events or modifying them. If you want to modify an event, you can do that in the GA4 interface as well. For example, there's this click event, which is actually only for outbound link clicks. Now, the event name here, click, can be kind of misleading because you might think it's for any clicks, any event clicks that you want to track on your web property. So what we can do is click on Modify Event, create a new event modification, and we can name this Click to Outbound Link. For the matching condition, We'll stay with event underscore name equals click. And for modifying parameters, we'll keep the event underscore name and use a new value of outbound click. And you can add any other conditions for your modifications as well. Click on create in the top right corner and you'll see the event modification here. Now we can test this by going to our example website. Let's just reload this. And on this page, we have a couple outbound links here. Let's click on this link, this outbound link, and then we'll go to our real-time report in Google Analytics 4, where you can make sure the event fires. So make sure you're in the report section and select real-time reports. Scroll down to the events table and we'll click to the next page here in this table, and there's our outbound click. So we can click on this event and we can see all the parameters associated with this event. You can see the link URL that was clicked on, and that checks out. And you can also see the page refer and page location on which the outbound link occurred. If you want to mark any of the events that you created as a conversion, you can toggle them on in the Mark as Conversion column. And if you want to stop tracking any events as conversions, you can also toggle them off. And these marked as conversion events will appear under the conversion section, where you can also add new conversion events by clicking on this button here and just typing in the event name of the conversion that you want to mark. But it has to be an already existing event, an event that you already created, and then you would click on save. So you could create an event for a thank you page and mark it as a conversion. So we can name this purchase thank you. Event name for the parameter, we can call this page view. And for the page location, you would set this to whatever your thank you page URL. For example, thankyou.html. You can also add parameter configurations. So we can click on add modification if you want to add a monetary value. Look for currency. In the new value field, type in USD or whatever your currency is. Add another modification. And in the parameter field, this time we'll type in value. And you can input whatever value you want to associate with this conversion. So for example, we'll use 50. And once you create that event, mark it as a conversion or add it to your list of conversions in the conversion section. We're going to skip over audiences because that's specifically for Google Ads. Custom definitions for dimensions and metrics are also very useful, but they are also for more advanced users. They are very useful if you want to capture additional data, additional dimensions and metrics that might not be captured with your custom events nor your custom parameters. When you configure these custom definitions, you can add them to your custom Explorer report as well as a report in Looker Studio. Since this is focused on Google Analytics 4, we'll move on to data retention. And this is one of the important features to take note of as you're configuring your GA4. By default, the event data retention is set to 2 months. So after 2 months, your data will disappear. You won't be able to access data more than 2 months in the past. So you want to make sure you set event data retention to 14 months and save it. There's the data filter section where you can create a filter for developer traffic or internal traffic. Whichever filter type you choose to create, you can create a condition to exclude or include only this type of traffic. And then you can adjust the filter state to 3 options. The last section under data settings is channel groups. If you click on channel groups, you can see the predefined settings for the default channel groupings. If you click on any one of these, you can see how these groupings are configured. I would just leave this alone, but if you feel strongly about certain data sources, certain traffic sources belonging to another group, you can create a new channel group. And we'll go on to data import. This feature allows you to upload data from other data sources so that you can blend it, you can join it to GA4 data. Next, there's the reporting identity section where you can choose how you want to identify your users. For example, if you have a pseudonymous user ID that you use for users who log into your site or other methods, you can choose how you would like to identify your users. In the attribution settings, you can determine what reporting attribution model you want to use for your conversion and revenue data. So you can put varying weights on different touch points and give credit to different touch points in the conversion journey. You can see the advertising section of GA4 where you can compare the various models. And we'll go over this more later on in the reporting section. You can change the look back window as well. This determines how long you want the conversion window to be open. In the property change history, you can see all the changes that have been made. With the data deletion request, you can schedule data deletions based on any requests that you receive from your users. In the debug view, you can use this to test any tracking that you've configured. It'll help you validate your data. It'll help you identify what is developer traffic. This is similar to the real-time report as it'll provide you with the events that occur and any parameters and properties. If you remember earlier in the video where we discussed creating filters for developer traffic, you can configure that traffic directly in the code, or you can use Google Tag Manager to use the debug view. And this will help you validate your data. So if we preview our GTM test our tags in Google Tag Manager, it'll bring up this window, and if we click through a little bit, give some data to the debug mode, we can see the data that has been captured from this preview mode. And you can click into these events to view the parameters that are captured as well. You can also integrate these other Google products into GA4. So you need to make sure you have an account set up for whatever product you want to integrate. Then click on the product link, click on link here, and follow the steps to configure the integration. Lastly, in the admin section, there's the Analytics Intelligent Search History. And this will show you all the previous queries you can delete from your history. We'll take a look at the homepage for GA4, which you can navigate to from this left menu. This page serves more as a suggestion page for navigation, and you'll see why in a moment. It does give you this chart you can use for key performance indicators or KPIs. You can click on these metrics at the top to see how they trend over time. Not only that, you can change the metrics to what you feel like are your KPIs. For example, you can change any of these to purchases, transactions, or revenue. You can also allow Google Analytics 4 to choose a metric for you. And the next time you come back to your homepage, these changes for those metrics will remain. For each chart, you'll see a link to the report in the bottom right corner. There's this real-time report that shows you users from the last 30 minutes. And each bar represents the number of users per minute. There's a table showing you the users and what country they're in. You can change the dimension to another dimension here, and you can change users to new users. There's an area for recently accessed, so you can navigate back to those sections easily. There are suggested charts and tables, and they're working on a section for insights and recommendations. Now we'll look at the report section. In the left navigation, click on Reports, and you'll be brought to the screen that looks like this. It's kind of your dashboard for all the key metrics and important trends that you want to keep an eye on. And by default, it's set to all users, but you can add a comparison from here and configuring the dimensions, selecting the dimensions you're looking for, selecting the values, and adding a new condition if you want. You can also edit the comparisons that you have in this top right corner here. You can share this report, and you can also click on this icon for insights. This allows you to drill down into any questions that you might have for these specific topics. And if you find something that you're interested in, you can click on that question and it'll provide you with the answer. There's a date range up here, so you can change the date, the time frame to any of these options available. You can also create a custom date range, and you can compare date ranges. We'll choose same period for last year, click on apply, and it'll update all the data with this dotted line for the previous year. And it adds these other data points from the previous year in different colors. For data tables and other charts, it gives you a percent comparison. And you can click through these different metrics to view the different trends. To the right of that, we have this tracker showing the number of users in the last 30 minutes. It gives you a link to the real-time report, which we'll cover in a moment. Any insights that GA4 wants to call out, it'll show in this area here. And there's a bar chart, a horizontal bar chart for where your users are coming from, what traffic channels they're coming from. You can adjust the dimension to any of these options available. Whenever you see a down arrow next to a dimension or a metric, you can click on it and it'll give you a drop-down list of other metrics or dimensions that you can choose from. And it'll show you metrics or dimensions that are related to the chart or the data table that you clicked on. Then there's a section for your top campaigns, so you can see the session and medium. You can change the metric from session to engaged session, as well as the session medium dimension to another session-based dimension. You can see where your users are coming from by country, as well as the retention rate and how users are engaging with your property over time. So there's this time series chart that shows user activity by these cohorts. And here there's this chart that shows the user cohort activity by week. So we have the user cohorts by these weeks listed in the left column. And as the weeks progress, it shows you the retention data for each subsequent week. Now down here we have the engagement section where it shows you the pages and the screens that receive the most views, the top events on your web property, and the top conversions. This data table down here shows you your top selling products if you have an e-commerce site. And finally, here's a donut chart that shows you the conversions by platform. In each of the cards, you'll notice in the top right corner, there's an icon that appears that indicates the sampling rate for the data presented in the card. For example, this shows us that this is an unsampled card. It's showing 100% of the available data, but thresholding is applied to show the data as quickly as possible, making sure that it meets the minimum data aggregation thresholds. You also see this green check mark for cards where 100% of the data is being used and displayed in the card. In some reports, it'll show at the top. Click on Real-Time Reports and you'll see the traffic that the web property is currently experiencing. Again, here's our icon for the data sampling rate. This real-time report shows data from the last 30 minutes. You can see this geomap where all the users are, and you can hover over various bubbles and see how many are in each bubble. So it breaks down the device category that the users are on as they're visiting your web property. You can view a user snapshot where GA4 will take one user and give you their recent activity. You can see their city, you can see top events, and you can click on any of these events to view the parameters. For example, page location, and it'll give you the rest of this data here. It gives you a timeline so you can see what events occurred and in what order they were fired. As you can see, there are different icons for different events. The blue finger cursor clicking is a general event, and the green flag icon is for conversion events, and the orange bug icon is for error events. You can click through and view different users, and if you want to exit, go to the top right corner here and click on Exit Snapshot. As you scroll down, you can see the various cards here, users by first user source. You can change this to any first user dimension related to source, medium, or campaign. There's users by audience for different audience segments, and you can change this metric to new users. You can see views by page title and page screen. There's event count by event name, conversions by event name, and users by user property if you're collecting any user property data. And for each of these items, you can click into them where applicable. For example, for events, you can click into the events and view the properties or the parameters associated with those events. For the rest of the out-of-the-box reports, your report layout in the left navigation will depend on what goals and objectives were chosen when the account was created. In this example, we have two sections. One is the lifecycle, which shows you the user journey. In the user section, there are reports on demographics and the technology they're using to access your web property. If another objective was chosen on setup from one of the objectives in the left column here, then the default reports in the right column is what you would see. There's a link to this documentation in the description. All of these out-of-the-box reports, except for the real-time report, but including the report snapshot, can be customized. So you can arrange these reports, these sections, as you desire. Starting with our acquisition overview reports, we have a big trend line time series chart for the key metrics here of users and new users. In the right, again, we have users in the last 30 minutes and the top countries. We scroll down and we have data tables here, one for new users by first user dimension, default channel groupings, and you can switch them to other source, medium, and campaign dimensions. There's one for sessions and session default channel grouping. There's a session by Google Ads if you're running any Google Ads campaigns. And there's a chart for the lifetime value average for all your users. This is based on the purchase events and ad revenue. So this gives you an overview of your user acquisition data and your traffic acquisition data. The difference is the user acquisition, as it mentions in the name, shows you data at the user level. So the user acquisition data will focus on the first time your user accessed or arrived on your web property, while the traffic acquisition data is at the session level. So you can see this data table on the left here is pertinent to the user acquisition, and this middle table is associated with the traffic acquisition. So a user can have multiple session acquisition data points. If we look at the user acquisition report, it gives us this chart that breaks down the different default channel groups. So you can see how they're trending over time, what the most popular traffic sources are for users for their first time sessions. And it also gives you this bar chart so you can see visually how that compares on an aggregate level. Now let's remove this comparison date range so that the data table is a bit easier to read. So in this data table, it breaks down the default channel group for first-time users. You can change this to another first-time user dimension like you could with the acquisition overview data table there, and you have these metrics here to the right. And the table is sorted by new users in descending order. So we see a summary row at the top for the aggregate of each metric. There's engaged sessions, engagement rate, engaged session per user, average engagement time, event count for all events, and you can see there's a drop down here where you can choose or search for specific events and filter this column that way. There's a conversions column, again, a drop down for the conversion events that you can use to filter the column, and if you have e-commerce, total revenue. You can click on any of the columns here to sort the table by that column. So if we wanted to sort the table by revenue, we click on this down arrow that appears and the table will update. For traffic acquisition, it's the same layout out of the box. Same with the user acquisition report, you can add a secondary dimension. So if you wanted to add a dimension for specific source, You can search for it and select the desired dimension. So then the table will update and you can see the specific sources that are bringing in traffic. You can simply remove the secondary dimension by clicking on this X. You'll see rows per page and you can adjust that. If you like, you can go to a specific row number, and you can also scroll through to see additional rows that don't appear. Now we'll go to the engagement section where we can see behavior data for our users on our web property. In the overview report, we have metrics for this chart such as average engagement time, engaged sessions per user, and this engaged session is counted as sessions where they actually interact with your web property. There's also average engagement time per session. On the right, we have users in the last 30 minutes and the top pages and screens that they viewed. We scroll down and we can see a time series chart for the number of views, that is page views, and event count over time. And you can see the specific events by the event name and the event count. And you can view each specific event and it'll bring you to the event report. If we click on view promotion, you can see we're brought to the events page and you can see all the data specific to this event. But we'll go over that more in a moment. We have a table for page views by page title and screen class. And then we have activity over time for users that fall within these various cohorts of 1 day, 7 days, and 30 days. In this last chart, you can see user stickiness with these various metrics. You can see metrics around DAU, which is daily active users, weekly active users, or WAU, and monthly active users, or MAU. So this first metric shows you what percent of monthly active users are also daily active users. The second metric shows you the percentage of weekly active users that are daily active users. And the last one shows you the percent of monthly active users that are weekly active users. In the events report, you can see this time series chart that shows you the top events that occur on your web property. And there's also a bar chart that shows you an aggregate for this date range. Moving to the data table below, here are the event names, and you can look at the metrics, which are event count, total users, event count per user, and total revenue. As mentioned in the overview report, you can click on specific event names that will filter this entire events report accordingly. So for these events, you can view the various parameters associated with those events by clicking on the drop down for this data table on the right and selecting whatever parameter you're interested in. But these metrics for this table here, you can see event count, total users, event count per user, and event value if you have any. And it looks like a data point highlighted for event count per user. If you hover over this data point, it'll show you this anomaly that's been detected. So you can see there's a spike that occurred on May 26th, where the expected event count per user was 7.07, and the actual event count per user was 9.88. That was almost a 40% increase. So you can drill down into this date. You can select that specific date and drill down. You can dig into things like what traffic sources those users arrived from, how they were engaging more with your web property. Scrolling down, here's a data table for the page title and the traffic share for these pages with percent of total along with average time spent on these pages. You can change the page title dimension to page path. Here's the event count by country, event count by gender, event count by sessions, a data table for page title, event count, and the total number of users that viewed these pages. Here's a table for page location, page refer. Down here we have session content if you've configured tracking for content grouping. And there's session keyword that will likely come in from advertising keywords. Your users queried to find their way to your website or web property. If you want to view this report for another event, you don't have to go back to the events report. You can look at the top here and click on this drop-down menu to search for your event. In the conversions report, so you can see the popular events here at the top, and you can scroll down to view the event names. Again, add secondary dimensions and see the number of conversions for the event, the total users, and total revenue. If you click on one of these conversions, it'll behave similarly to the events report, where it'll filter that report according to that conversion. But here we see the conversion data is shown with the default channel group. And you can change this metric and this dimension if you wish. Scroll down and it gives you the data by default channel group. In the pages and screens report, it shows you the most viewed screens and page paths. Scroll down and you can see the data here. You can switch these to different dimensions such as page title and content group. We have the metrics for views, users, views per users, average engagement time, event count for your events, conversions for all your conversions, and total revenue. And Google has added a landing page report as well. So these are the most popular landing pages for this date range. You can see all the landing pages here in this data table. For the monetization section, you want to make sure that you have the tracking for e-commerce or for ads in your mobile app. So make sure you have the expertise to set that up. Talk to a developer that can help you do it, or configure it in Google Tag Manager. In the overview report for monetization, we have these KPIs for this time series chart for total revenue, purchase revenue for e-commerce web properties, and total ad revenue for mobile apps. That is revenue from ads placed in your mobile app. And it looks like Google needs to fix their tagging for e-commerce tracking because they aren't receiving any data for e-commerce revenue from the 19th here. If we scroll down, there's a time series chart for total purchasers and first-time purchasers. And then there's average purchase per user. That's revenue divided by the number of users. You can see the most popular items that have been purchased. And then there's items purchased by item list name. So you can see the different types of product categories. There's items viewed in promotion by promotion name, purchase revenue by order coupon, and then there's a section for revenue from in-app purchases and ad units in your mobile app. The e-commerce purchases report provides us with more details around the products that have been purchased. So you can see the most popular items that have been purchased over time and items viewed compared to the items that have been added to cart. So items viewed here along the x-axis and the number of items that have been added to cart and where each of these products fall within this chart. And then there's this data table that provides the items, the products, along with these metrics, including the number of times that it's been viewed, the number of times it's been added to cart, number of times it's been purchased, and the revenue that the product brought in. You can change the item name dimension to another item dimension such as item ID or item category or item brand. So for example, if we click on item category, we can see these different categories and the metrics across those categories. If you have a mobile app, this will show you the in-app purchases. Same with publisher ads, where it'll show you additional ad unit information along with these metrics. In this user purchase journey, it gives you a funnel. So you see that it's a closed funnel where users must follow these steps to successfully flow through the funnel. You can see the number of users for each step and how many users advance to the following step. So we start out with 60,000 users for session start, but the number of users that view the product goes to 21% or 13,000. And then you can see the data for the rest of the steps. Only 0.7% of the 13,000 end up adding to cart, and from that number, that 0.7%, 63.5% of those that added to cart began to check out. Unfortunately, none of those within this time frame purchased. You can also see the abandonment rate for each step. You can click on View Funnel Steps to see the conditions for each step, but it looks like it's a standardized report or standardized configuration, so right now you can't change or configure the funnel steps. And then in this data table, it breaks it down by device category for each of these steps, and you can change the dimension to something else. There's also a section with the retention data. For this report, we have new users and returning users. There's a user retention by cohort. Same with user engagement, where it shows us the amount of time that these user cohorts engage. This chart shows us the user retention over time, where on day 0, it starts with 100%, and then it shows us the percentage of users that return the subsequent days. We can see the average engagement time for each of those days as well. And in this last chart, there's the lifetime value, which is the sum of total ad revenue and purchase revenue divided by number of new users. In the demographics overview, we have a geo map that shows us the number of users by country. You can change the users metric to new users or returning users. There's a real-time report, and then there's a data table for users by city, users by gender, male and female, users by interests, according to data that Google has collected across its platforms and various data sources, users by age, and users by language. If you click on demographic details, this report will show you the country demographics, showing you the top countries that give you the most users. Scroll down and there's a data table for country. You can change the country dimension to any of these other dimensions. But the metrics provided are users, new users, engaged sessions, engagement rate, engaged sessions per user, average engagement time, event count for all your events, conversions for the conversions you've marked, and total revenue. In this tech overview report, we have users by platform with a pie chart, as well as this real-time data table. Then we have users by operating system. In these data tables and charts, it gives us an additional metric to choose from in the form of total revenue. We have users by platform and device category, users by browser, users by device category in this donut chart, users by screen resolution, and if you have a mobile app, users by app version, data for the latest app release, app stability, as far as crashes are concerned, and users by device model. In the tech details report, it shows you data by browser. So you'll see the top browsers, and then in the data table, you can see various metrics for the top browsers. You can switch the dimension to these other tech dimensions, including operating system version, app version, etc. We're going to cover customizing your reports. We're talking about the reports section of Google Analytics. All these reports here, with the exception of the real-time report. You need to have editor role for whatever property you're using. Let's go through how to make sure you have the right access. We'll go to the admin section here in the bottom left corner, and depending on your GA4 account, you can edit the access for the entire account or just for the property. So let's go to the property access management. And as you can see, you have all the users here, and if you click on the three dots to the right, you can view each user's account details. And for any existing users, this is where you can change the role of each user. So if you want to elevate any users with a viewer or analyst role to an editor role, you can do that here. And then make sure you save. And you can also add users with the editor role if you want. Now we'll go back to the report section. If you click on one of these sections, you'll see overview and then these other reports. So each section can have one overview report and up to 10 detailed reports. These other reports are the detailed reports. The difference between an overview report and a detailed report is the structure or the layout of these reports. So overview reports have scorecards at the top so that you can see these metrics at the very top, along with a line chart. Then we have a mix of other charts and tables. And for detailed reports, you'll have two charts at the top. They can be bar charts, line charts, scatter plots, different kinds of charts. And then underneath those, you'll have a table. We'll take a look at this library section, which is a hub for your collections and reports. Collections being a set of reports. And you can see that the areas on this page are marked out clearly with collections at the top, followed by reports. And you'll notice that the collections matches what you see in the left navigation here. So life cycle here and user collections are the same as what you see in the left navigation. You can edit the collection by creating topics or editing topics, as you can move detail reports and overview reports into various topics here. You can rearrange the order of the reports that are already categorized in these topics here. You can also create a new topic. So let's do that and name it conversions. So click on apply, and let's utilize the search bar to search for any conversion reports. And it looks like we have one under detail reports, so let's drag it over. It looks like there isn't any for overview reports, so we'll have to create that. If there is an existing overview report, you can only replace the existing overview report with another overview report. Save this, and we'll save changes to the current collection. Now, you can also save it as a new collection, and it'll show up under the collections section on this page. You can create a new collection by clicking on this area here, and you'll have the option to create a new collection using a blank slate, which will just bring you to a similar screen that we saw when we tried to edit the collection. So you can just create new topics and fill in the reports that way. You can also use some of the templates that they have available. Now we can go down to the report section. So these are the existing reports. Each of these reports here have options. If you move your cursor over to the right, you can see these three dots, and it gives you options to edit, make a copy, rename, or set as report snapshot if the report is an overview report. If it's a detailed report, you won't have that option. So you can edit any of these reports from this page, this library page here. Each property can have up to 200 reports. So you have quite a bit to work with. Now, let's cover customizing an overview report. Let's use this acquisition overview report first to edit this customization. So let's click on the writing utensil in the top right corner here, and we can see this configuration page load. So we have the main report area here. These are the cards that are currently in the report, and you can add more cards. But if you want to add cards, you have to either choose from this gallery here that's available, but you can also customize another card. You'll have to do this in the detailed report customization. So when you're customizing a detailed report, that's where you can create another card, and you can use that card in an overview report. We can see that there are two collections, and this matches what's in our GA4 reporting interface. Now you can browse through all the cards that are available, but you can also use the search bar up here and type in what you're looking for. And for each of the cards, you'll notice that some have a drop down. So if you click on this drop down, you can see what's available for the specific card. Now what we're going to do is use the search bar and look for cards that give us data on devices. Let's use this table here and change the metric to new users, because this is an acquisition overview report, so we're just looking for data on new users. And we'll check that, and you'll notice an indicator at the top here that tells you how many cards you can select. So we'll click on add a cart in the top right here, And if we scroll down, we can see our new users card by platform, device category. And you can actually use the drop downs that are available in each of these cards if you want to change the metric or change the dimension here. You can rearrange the cards if you like. So for example, if I want to move this card, I can just click on these dots next to the card and drag it to wherever I want to place it. And it updates instantaneously. And then there's this report template section, and it shows you what report template this overview report is linked to. So right now it's linked to the acquisition overview. And what that means is not only is it based on the acquisition overview template, but if Google updates the acquisition overview report, it'll receive, that is, this specific overview report that we're customizing will receive any updates that Google makes to the template. You can also unlink it, but if you unlink it and save it, then you won't be able to relink it. So let's go ahead and save our report, save changes to the current report, or save it as a new report. And we're going to choose save changes to the current report. So we'll click on save, and all users will be able to see the changes that we just made to this report. So we'll click on back. So there's our new card for new users. You can also create a new overview report in the library section. So if you click on library from the left navigation, scroll down to the reports section, and there are a number of things that you can do here. So first of all, here's the report, the acquisition overview that we just modified. Create a new report, and it'll just bring you to the same report configuration screen that we saw earlier where you can add your cards. Let's talk about customizing detailed reports. So there are a couple ways that you can do this. If you're in the library page, you can create a new report and choose to create a detailed report from which you can also create from a blank slate or use a template. You can also edit an existing detailed report by clicking on the three dots, or you can make a copy. And finally, if you navigate to a detailed report from the left navigation, you can also click on the writing utensil in the upper right corner, and that'll bring you to this configuration screen. There's the dimensions and metrics. If you click on the dimensions, it provides you with the list of dimensions included in the report and indicates the default dimension. You can set various dimensions as the default, and you can rearrange the dimensions, or you can add a new dimension to this report. If we go back, we'll take a look at the metrics. You can also add or remove metrics. You can rearrange them as well, and you can indicate which metric you want to sort the report by. The data table down here is sorted by new users in descending order, and that's what this down arrow indicates. So we can also sort by a different metric. So if we click on Engage Sessions and click on Apply, we'll see that the charts changes. Our data table is now sorted by engaged sessions in descending order. So the second section is charts. So right now we have the bar chart on the left and the line chart on the right. You can toggle whether you want these charts to be visible, and you can also change the type of chart, and you can also rearrange the order. The third section is the report template. The fourth section is the summary cards. And these are the cards that you can add to your overview reports. So these summary cards, you can edit or delete them, or you can create a new card. So if we go to edit this first summary card, we can see the dimensions here that can be used for the dropdown in your overview report. You can add more dimensions, and this is from the list of dimensions in the report builder on the previous screen. You can add more metrics, and these are from the metrics also from the previous screen. So you'll notice in this card preview that there is a drop-down that contains all of these dimensions listed here as options. So these will only be available for the overview report. As you can see in this report, you don't have the option to select a drop-down. Let's create a new summary card here. So we'll click on Create, add a new dimension. We'll choose First Time User Default Channel Grouping, add metrics for new users, engagement rate, and conversions. And for our visualization, we'll choose the pie chart. And to save this card, we'll click on Apply. We also have this option for a bar chart, where the blue lines indicate the values for each line item. In the actual card, when it's in the overview report, you'll have a link to the report template that it's linked to. So we'll exit out of that. So now we have these 3 summary cards for this report. Click on Save. You can save changes to current report or save it as a new report. And we'll save as a new report, just as an example here. We'll go back. It'll bring up this message, but you can discard this because if you notice in the background, it's cleared all the summary cards that we had, indicating that it's actually a copy that's being shown here. So you can discard the changes, and we'll see in the main library page that our report has been saved, as it'll appear in the list of reports here. So there's our report. You can also create Explore reports or Exploration reports, which Google classifies as advanced techniques you can use to analyze and dig into your data. On the main page for explorations, you see a section to start a new exploration with either a blank canvas, or you can use one of the great templates that Google has available. On the bottom, there's a table for a list of reports that have been created in your web property by other users, if that's available. But if you click on the template gallery, we can take a look at all the report templates that Google has available. As we go over these exploration reports, we'll try to keep these at a high level so this tutorial doesn't go too long. You can click on Freeform to create a new report. For the exploration name, we can call it Social Media Report. And in this report, for the dimensions, what we'll do is add a dimension for source. Check that off, click on Apply, and move that over to the rows. We'll actually replace the existing city dimension in there. And then we'll go down. Right now we have columns for device category, so that's desktop, mobile, and tablet. Then we can go down here and click on filters, add one for source, select the match type to be matches regex. And what we'll do is add this regex. So this regex looks for top-level domains and subdomains for each of these values. Click on Apply, and the report will update, and you can name this tab as well. You can change it to Social Media Traffic by Device, and that's what we'll call it, Social Media Traffic Report. Change the time frame if you want. You can add comparisons. Click Apply, and then just explore your data in different ways like that. You can also add a couple more tabs to include some visualizations. So if you go to your tab and click on this drop down, select Duplicate, and for this tab, we'll change it to a donut chart. So here we can see the percentages of traffic, and then let's duplicate this one, and this time we'll choose line chart. Now if you have a lot of domains that you've included in your regex, this can get pretty messy, but this can also help you see different trends and where or when traffic might have spiked, and you can find out what those spikes were attributed to. So we can change the name of this tab to Social Media Traffic over time. You have other visualization options here with a scatter plot, a bar chart, and a geomap. So if you go back to the Explore main page in GA4, you'll see your report here. You can just click into it and it'll give you all the tabs that you created previously. Now let's take a look at the funnel exploration. So here's what our funnel exploration looks like. We have the steps across the top here and the stages. For each stage you can see how many users progressed to the next stage and how many users abandoned at each stage. Step 1, we have 61,000 users in this time frame here. And of those 61,000, 72% or 44,000 advanced to the next stage, to step 2, while 17,000 or 28% abandoned at step 1. And then in step 3, of the 33,000, 1.8%, almost 2% advanced to purchase. In the table here, you can see the various steps along with the breakdown for a device category, which was added in this section down here. And then for each step, you can see the percent of step 1 that advanced to the subsequent step. And you can see the numbers for each device category here in the same column. And then for completion rate, these are the numbers that match what you see in the chart. Then there's the abandonment column and the abandonment rate, which matches what you see in the chart as well. And we go over to the configuration section. So if we wanted to take a look at paid traffic, we can add this in the segment comparison section, and the report will update so that we only look at the paid traffic. You can remove it by clicking on the X and add the dimensions for the breakdown. So you can see that it's already added device category. You can adjust the number of rows per dimension. And since the funnel exploration chart shows us the flow through the funnel, you can't add any metrics. Over here, you can choose whether you want a standard funnel or a trended funnel, which gives you a line chart for each stage. And you can see how that trends over time. So right now, it gives all of the stages in one chart, but you can click on these tabs at the top to highlight one stage. You can hover over to see which line is which, or you can click on one of those tabs to isolate that line. There's a toggle for making the funnel open or closed. If you make the funnel open, that means users can enter into the funnel at any step. So for example, if we look at the first stage, the first open and visit, you can see that this trend line is less than the other steps or stages because users were entering into the funnel at other steps. So you can make it closed where the users must start from step 1 by leaving this off. Over here, continuing in the tab settings, you can configure the steps, remove any steps if you want, or edit the steps, which you can configure in this area. So you can adjust any steps beginning with the title. You can copy the step, remove step, or add steps above or below with these options from the 3 dots here. You can change the event. You can add parameters based on these dimensions. You can add multiple conditions for each step. Like in step 1, it's already using an OR statement, but you can also add another OR statement or add an AND statement. So for example, we can add a new condition for geography, where we want the country to be set to United States. Click on apply, and the preview summary will update to the right. And then for subsequent steps, you can indicate whether you want it to indirectly follow by or directly follow by, which means step 2 comes right after the step 1 for directly followed by. Indirectly followed by means step 2 can follow step 1 at any time in the session. And here you can add a time if you want to add this restriction. So you can turn this on and adjust the time frame that you want the next step to follow. You scroll down and add another step if you wish. And when you're ready, just click apply. You can toggle on to show the elapsed time for the funnel, and you can see the amount of time that it takes to complete each step. In the next action section, you can select a dimension to show the most common actions that users take after each step. So if you click on this area, select event name, then when you hover over each step, it shows you a list of the top 5 next actions. So you can see that for each step here. And you can add any filters that you wish. What's nice about these Explore reports is they have these undo and redo buttons when you adjust your Explore report. And it's especially useful with the next type of Explore report that we'll look at. So similar to the funnel exploration report, there's the path exploration report, where the funnel exploration focuses on one specific clickstream path. The path exploration gives you multiple clickstreams that users can go through in their user journey. And this is what the path exploration looks like. It's kind of a flow chart. So from the session start, they can go through page view, event, or some other events, and from the page view, they'll go to one of these other events. And with the steps, you can configure them. You can create a reverse path exploration where it starts with a destination by clicking on Start Over in the top here and choosing Endpoint. So we can choose an event name such as Purchase for our endpoint, and then we can view a path exploration and reverse engineer the journey. The steps, each data point is what they call a node. So if you click on this writing utensil, you can edit the step. Right now it's only showing the page view, and then you can see the other events if you click on this more link. But if you want to see other events that users take, the other actions that users take, you can check or uncheck some of these event names and then click on apply. If you click on another event within step 1, you can see where the user or what events the user take after that action. So the way to expand or add more steps to your path exploration is to go to the last step and then click on an event where it'll expand and add another step. You can change the event, the node type, to one of these other node types: page title, screen name, page path, etc. And we can see what that looks like. If you want to retract a step, what you have to do is click on the node that you previously clicked on. So for example, we clicked on page view in order to add step 3. And if we wanted to remove step 3, then we would simply click page view again. Here we have another example where we have session start, page view, and then these additional steps for these view promotion events. If you look in the tab settings, you'll notice that there's a setting that's toggled off for viewing unique nodes only. And what this means is that any subsequent events that are identical to a previous event are included. And that's why we have multiple steps that show view promotion in this one flow. If we toggle this on, then it removes those identical subsequent steps after the first one is shown. So we'll see the first event for view promotion, but then we won't see it in the next step. The values shown are for event count, but you can also change the values to a user metric. And if you'd like, you can add any filters with these dimensions here. Now let's take a look at a segment overlap exploration. This will show us various audience segments and how they overlap with one another. So you can see the audience segments here and the legend. With these various audience segments, you can see the total number of active users in this table below, along with the various segments that overlap. So for the segment comparisons, you can just drag over the audience segments that you want to compare. So we can let's replace age 25 through 24 with this US based audience segment. The table will update along with a chart, and you can see how these audience segments overlap. And you can break it down by various dimensions. You can add a dimension. We'll just take one from the existing list and break it down by gender. So it breaks down the table in this way with the audience segments at the top here. you can also look at various values. For example, event count or transactions. Let's add in transactions, and this will add another column to the table so you can see what audience segments are producing the most transactions. And that way, this will give you an idea of how you can market and the type of content you can create to optimize your targeting for these audience segments. Now let's go on to the cohort exploration. So for this cohort exploration, again, you'll see the cohorts according to the date in which they entered your site or visited your web property. And in this table, you have the left column with the date range. It's similar to the cohort table that you see in your report snapshot, with the week number at the top and the number of users for each week. So for this week here, you can see the number of users that visited and then how many of those returned to the site in subsequent weeks. For the cohort inclusion, you can change this first touch to specific events. So for example, if you want to add one for add to cart event, you can see the number of users that took the action of adding an item to a cart. And then for the return criteria, you can also specify what event you want to use. If it's another event or another add to cart event. You can specify the columns here. Right now it's set to weekly, but you can also set to daily or monthly. To see the difference in calculations, let's change this cohort inclusion to any conversion. We'll keep the return criteria the same as any event. So for standard calculation, the user must meet the return criteria in that given period. For a rolling calculation, the user must meet the return criteria. They must perform an action that fires an event for all the previous periods. So for any user that returns in week 3 for the rolling calculation, they must perform an event for the previous weeks as well. And then for the cumulative calculation, this means the user meets the return criteria in any period in the exploration. So let's change this back to the standard calculation and back to first touch acquisition. Under values, you can change the metric type. You have two options. One is sum, which is what's displayed currently, and the other is per cohort user, which will show you the percentage of the metric divided by the total number of users in the cohort. But if you hover over each of these cells, you can see the numbers for both the sum and active users, or whatever metric you've chosen, out of the total number of cohort users. You can change the value. Here we have purchase revenue available, so let's just change that to see what that looks like. Now we'll go on to the user lifetime template. In this table, we have the first user medium, the traffic source that they came from, the total number of users, lifetime average, which is the sum of the revenue from all the sources for all time, lifetime engagement duration average, and lifetime transactions average. You can change the row dimensions to any of these suggested dimensions as well. GA4 also provides some great templates for different use cases and industries. They're all based on the techniques that we just reviewed, and they include traffic acquisition, conversions, and prediction for top spenders. So make sure you check those out. If you're spending on advertising, click on the advertising section of GA4 to help you understand the ROI on your advertising spend, as well as where to spend your budget. At the top, you'll see that there's a filter for conversion events. So we see the channels that drive the most conversions according to the default channel grouping. And then we have a table down here that shows us the most popular touch points for your users that convert. If you click on the link for all channels, we'll have this report so you can see the trend of the channels that bring in the most conversions over time, as well as an aggregate for this date range with this bar chart. And then in this data table, you can see all the default channel groups. You can change the dimension to another traffic dimension. And you can add a secondary dimension as well. The metrics included are conversions, ad costs, cost per conversion, total revenue, and return on spend. So that's for the performance section. Now, if we scroll down, we can take a look at the conversion paths under the attribution section. First, we see the touch points of users that convert by default channel grouping. You can change the dimension, and this breaks down all the touch points from the early to the mid stage to late touch points for your conversions. If you hover over a channel, it shows you the touch points, the credit for each stage in the conversion path. So you can see that organic search brings in the most users as far as initial touch points, more users during the middle of the user journey, but it's direct that brings in more users during the late stages of the conversion path. You scroll down to the data table. Here are the dimensions that you can use, but you can see the dimensions that are most popular as far as touch points. As you can see, some of these conversions require many touch points across multiple channels. And so the metrics include conversions, purchase revenue, days to conversion, and number of touch points to conversion. There's also a model comparison report under the attribution section where you can compare the different models available, the different models that we touched on earlier. So again, you can change the dimension, you can add a secondary dimension, but here you can choose which attribution models you want to compare and how they credit the various channel groups for the conversions. You can pick your first attribution model in the first column here, and then you can pick a different attribution model in the second column. And the third section will show you the comparison, the percent change between the first model and the second model. So if you found this useful, please like, comment, subscribe. And if you want more content on digital analytics, including tracking, reporting, analysis, we'll see you in the next episode.